Data protection and privacy teams are under more pressure than ever with new laws, AI oversight, data breaches, and the constant expectation to do more with fewer resources.
That's why TrustArc built a modern privacy and data protection management platform powered by Arc Intelligence. It unifies your tools, automates the work that slows you down, and surfaces what matters most right when you need it.
From guided quick actions to our intelligent assistant, Ask Arc, you get credible, contextual answers backed by expert research, not generic AI guesses.
Finally, privacy that works the way privacy pros work.
Learn how TrustArc helps teams move faster with confidence at trustarc.com/serious-privacy. That's trustarc.com/serious-privacy.
You're listening to Serious Privacy by TrustArc. Please welcome our hosts, Paul Breitbarth and Kay Royal.
If you have listened to the first season of Serious Privacy, you are probably familiar with the keen interest both Kay and I have in social justice and the need for equal opportunities for all. I have always known the privacy community to be inclusive, which is not to say we cannot do better or be more diverse. Our guest today has given a lot of thought to the question of how to improve diversity across the board in organizations without collecting endless amounts of personal data. Shoshana Rosenberg is the founder and CEO of SafePorter, a data trust providing valuable business insights while respecting the privacy of employees. And if that isn't enough, she is also the Deputy General Counsel for Privacy, Cybersecurity, and Data Strategy, as well as CPO and Vice President at WSP USA. A lot of work, a lot to do, and you will hear all about it in today's episode of Serious Privacy. My name is Paul Breitbarth.
And I'm Kay Royal, and welcome to Serious Privacy. Shoshana, we are absolutely delighted to have you on the show. I love it. One of our friends recommended that we have you after you posted a wonderful IAPP article. And then, of course, you and I both recalled that we've at least met at some point, sometime. So it's absolutely wonderful to connect with people that had we been meeting in person, we probably would have sat down, had coffee, had tea, had some wine, something. So it's really nice to be able to connect. So are you ready for the unexpected question?
Oh, I am ready.
All right. I'm going to give you an easy one, I think. Who is your hero? Uh-oh.
That is not an easy question. That is not an easy question.
Oh.
You were not kidding. Okay. Who is my hero? My absolute hero, the person who I think has made the difference in who I am it's my mom. I can't do it. It's my mom. I'm sorry. It's not fair. There are too many people who have done great things in the world. I have to tell you, I first struck on Dorothy Parker because she was my hero as a child. There was something about her writing that really called to me. Since then, I've had many, many heroes, clearly. But I'm going to go with my mom. She was in international development, and she really paved the way. She didn't know there was a glass ceiling, and she walked right past, and broke a lot of things on the way. And she absolutely has always been my inspiration.
Sounds amazing.
That is amazing. I agree. Paul, what about you?
On a personal level, I think I would have to echo Shoshana, but then with my dad.
My mom?
No, my dad, who always set the example for me and made me who I am today. Of course, together with my mother as well. But for sure, he was a hero for me.
What did he do?
Sorry?
What did your dad do?
Oh, he did a lot of things. He was in civil service for a long time and in other public functions. He was in politics, but just the way he...
So you came by it honestly.
Oh, yeah. The way he just lived his life, I think, and the way he spoke out on all kinds of issues that helped make me who I am today. A privacy level, I would probably say that one of my heroes is Sophie Innetfeld, MEP, who we had on a podcast some time ago last year when we had the Schrems judgment, because she never gives up fighting. She doesn't seem to need a lot of sleep, but she's so passionate for fundamental rights protection and the role that Europe should play in upholding the standards to which it agreed itself. And I think that's very inspiring as well.
It is.
Wait, this is totally unfair. I didn't know that we got a privacy, because I could do this in like the superhero realm and then the privacy realm.
Ooh, who's your privacy hero?
Pam Dick.
Pam
World
Dick.
Privacy Forum absolutely blends all of the things that I care about together, and then completely takes everything to the next level in terms of making sure that she is really in a point of advocacy and moving the ball along for privacy worldwide in some very, very amazing and cool ways.
Wow. I am impressed. So I'm going to follow, and I'm going to go the same way then. And I will say, Paul, I'd never thought about my dad being my hero, honestly. And you and I both know our recent history with that. But my dad was also a civil servant, and the Army trained him in computers when he joined, and he was big in computers. When he left the military, he came back as a civilian working for Fort Lee in Virginia, very near him. It's the only place I lived as a child traveling in the military was Fort Lee, Virginia. And when we were cleaning out the house, I found one of the original hard drives that like discs. It's like 15 inches across or something. It was really huge that he had hanging up in the garage. But on 9/11, I knew my dad went to the Pentagon like every 3 weeks. And on 9/11, I couldn't get hold of my dad. So I just assumed he was at the Pentagon. And if there was something I needed to know, they were notifying family. No, he was busy. He was working around the clock 27 hours a day to make sure that our infrastructure was protected. And he missed one of my weddings because apparently he was helping East Germany set up their national defense system or something, like that. Who knows? Okay, privacy hero.
No, it sounds like a total badass. Yes, sorry, privacy hero.
And he still never had a bachelor's degree.
But everybody needs one to do good work.
I was the first in my family to get a bachelor's degree, even though he did all of that. But most people realize, I sometimes say this, that I get a lot of my unexpected questions from this book. It's a Q&A, 5-year journal, and in it, there's like entries for each question. You can do like 5 entries for each one. So today's question for who is your hero, starting in 2016, Kamala Harris. 2017, Barack Obama. 2018, I'm so stuck on Jason Momoa. 2019, I'm going to go with my new boss, Hillary Mandel. 2020, Kamala, ! So, and it's a November question. So it was November 7th. So it was before the election was called.
Now my unboxing hero, but that's about as far as it goes.
Right.
No, and what a great return. You've certainly come full circle. I have to say, I really like the Proust questionnaire aspect of that. And I actually had people fill things out at my wedding, answering Proust questionnaire. Knowing that 10 years later, we're going to invite them to come back, hopefully to Big Sur and do it again. Because it is really interesting to see how you change. Right?
It is.
Absolutely.
It really is. And I hope one day my children will enjoy this book because 2020 was my 5th year. I hope one day they will enjoy that book. Who knows? You never know what kids are going to do, but you never know when your kids look up to you as a hero either. So there you go. My goal was always to be the person my children thought I was. So people asked, what's my driver? It was to be the person they thought I was. So, okay, let's actually get into our topic for today. But that was a fascinating conversation. I could just leave it at that and we could just keep going.
I just want to go back and have a whole debate about the bachelor's degree thing, because I think we could clear that up for the world right now and talk about how underappreciated the trades are and how overrated. Anyway, but let's keep going.
Well, no, we really could, because that actually goes into the topic of diversity, especially diversity in privacy. Because Absolutely. You get asked the question, does everyone need a bachelor's degree? And of course, now you get the question, do you need a law degree to be a privacy officer? And the answer is no, you don't.
So we had an intern this summer for Safe Porter who was doing a lot of research on his own. He was not sort of doing work for us so much as pushing into things and coming back and consulting with me so that he could push forward. And we helped him get his certification, and he's not done college yet, right? So he's actually going to go ahead and be an intern, I think, at Nike this summer, which is phenomenal. But I think it's really important. And I really pushed him to say, look, you can gain your qualifications and your footing as someone with an acumen in a given field. And privacy, I repeat myself, but the landscape is changing, but the horizon is fixed. We know where this goes, right? And so why not familiarize yourself with something that you're clearly passionate about? So I think it's really important that people are aware of that there is no sort of threshold except their own curiosity and pursuit.
That is absolutely true. And Paul is like me. He teaches a privacy course at a university. And it's interesting that in 2018 was the first year I had anyone in the class that actually knew what privacy was. I had 2 students that were working as interns implementing GDPR. But I find it fascinating that people now recognize that they want to go into privacy as a living, whereas all of us were like, it wasn't a thing. We just accidentally fell into it, or our natural passions led us down that path. But we didn't sculpt a career towards that in a deliberate fashion, or at least we didn't here in the US. Paul may have done so in Europe.
No, absolutely not. It's sheer coincidence. But I am curious to hear how Shoshana got into privacy.
Yes.
Oh, so
tell the story.
Right, so I've already foreshadowed the international development background. I grew up with both parents working in international development, and the being around USAID and the way that I grew up with this understanding of sort of how do you make the world a little bit better. And so when I was focusing my studies, actually, it was always on international law and international human rights law. So I studied in Paris, I studied in London, and I focused very much outside of the US. So I actually was looking for the right tether into human rights law. And so privacy, as I became aware of international privacy laws, that was an immediate place for me to take purchase. I was running alongside it with a whole number of corporate law aspects that I was working on in my day-to-day, but I got to run that through our organization, then Parsons Brinkerhoff, as something that we were working on in tandem, which is phenomenal. And so I got to actually grow up what has turned out to be 3 different global privacy programs over the course of my tenure. And it's been an amazing piece of who I am. But my focus has always been international, partly because that is where much of this truly took root, right? And now even more so because I think that having that grounding in the human rights basis is really critical to grant perspective to places where, say, laws were drafted very quickly with maybe a different foundation or impetus.
Right.
I think it's really important to see where the horizon lines up and to understand the gaps, which I do believe that most of the laws popping up worldwide and certainly in the US have started to self-adjust toward.
Right. Self-level, I think, is really good. I think it's really fascinating that not only did you come at it from an international perspective, but you came at it from a helping perspective, which is something a lot of people are confused at when I tell them, when they want to know, well, how did you shift from nursing to law? And, my thing is, well, it's a privacy lawyer, it's a helping profession. Unlike most other lawyers, we really are here to help people. We help the companies by protecting the average Joe. And it confuses people. But if you don't have that kind of mentality, I am firmly of the belief you will not be a successful privacy officer or data protection officer or privacy counsel. You can make a living at it. Some companies might appreciate that cold approach, but you won't truly you won't truly benefit the company you work for unless you have that helping mindset and are passionate about it.
Very true.
Very much so. So I love it. Paul, do you have a question? Normally, 10 minutes ago, we would have started with you having a question, which you did the first one.
Of course I have questions, Kay. I have many questions. Shoshana, one thing that triggered me when I looked at your profile.
Triggered in a bad way?
No, in a very positive way. But you put on your LinkedIn that you are an inclusion by design advocate. And looking at the company that you have established and the work that you are doing, that seems to make sense. But rather than me explaining what that should mean, it's probably best if you do it yourself and tell our listeners what you mean by being an inclusion by design advocate.
These are such good questions. So specifically, I have been presenting. I actually did several presentations over the last few years in Europe around inclusion by design. And it came out of, it's going to be an elaborate answer, but
go ahead. We have the time.
It's a twofold notion. It began with the understanding that where companies were ready to implement privacy by design, which is usually sometime after their initial GDPR panic, where they were going to make that adjustment and disrupt their processes to incorporate that piece, that I truly believe that privacy attorneys, privacy non-attorneys, right? Privacy professionals have the ability to help. I want to say insinuate, but that sounds insidious. So to help ensure that another aspect takes purchase. So one aspect of inclusion by design, the original aspect was the notion that I really want to sell the privacy community on a couple of things, which thanks for giving me a platform. But I want to sell us on the understanding that where we are talking to companies about how to incorporate privacy by design into their DevOps teams, into their innovation programs, into all of these, they also have an opportunity, because the process is inherently disrupted, to include inclusion by design, which is to ensure that there's a diversity and inclusion impact assessment review. If you're looking at women's shoe sizes over 12 and a half in a given area, what are you really looking at? If you're going to blur out faces when you do a Google Maps of houses, but not under bridges, who are you forgetting, right? So there are all of these ways that we have the ability to have a value add to other companies. And one of the things at that time that I was actually trying to push forward, that of course I'm pretty busy and I can't do by myself, but maybe you guys will think about it and run with it.
Absolutely. We're there.
Because we do have a good level, hopefully a growing level of diversity within the privacy community. If we were to build out groups that sort of twice a year pro bono would say, we will dedicate 8 hours, an 8-hour day as a diverse group of privacy professionals to help review smaller companies' privacy by design process and protocols, and to also take into account the diversity inclusion impacts of the data they're collecting, it would be good both for them to get familiar with these companies that hopefully will grow, but also really good for the companies. And so my notion was, what can we as a community do to use these pain points and make them something more?
I've actually thought about doing that as a fundraiser for certain things. If people donated, money, I would do a free review of their privacy policy, and not a blessed one has ever taken me up on that. But the other approach is ASU, Arizona State University, is considered the number one most innovative university, I don't know, in the nation, in the world, something like that. And I've been trying to get them to include privacy, at least a workshop in their entrepreneurial efforts, where they're licensing companies and coming up with new inventions. Once a semester, do a workshop where privacy people can come in and help, because most of their student inventors are very diverse. And that's who they're giving the opportunity to. Why not have privacy professionals come in and assist them in startup companies? Because let's be frank, that's where we see a lot of the problems. There's startup companies that are focused on making their whatever it is they're making, and not on how do they manage personal data. So I love your idea. Oh yeah, I'm all over it. And my boss isn't hearing this.
It's extending the purview into saying, if you're going to deal with pain points, let's expand what you're looking at.
Right.
And then what it grew into, which is amazing that you asked me about, Paul, is that we started building out a separate organization with Safe Porter that is actually a nonprofit that will both serve as for aggregate upon aggregate data to feed back into the DEI consulting and research universe to help them understand the trends that are filtering through, never with the raw data, only the aggregate snapshots, but also an inclusion by design certification process, which doesn't mean that an organization is inclusive, but it actually means, and I think that the Diversity Council has actually started a similar program, and they got to it before we did, but we thought of it maybe first.
Yeah, I like that.
Very glad and not competing with them on it. But the notion is inclusion by design organizations have all of the checks, balances, protocols, reporting. It's part of their employee performance reviews that diversity and inclusion is included. They have everything that they need to have in place to be held accountable to the assertions that they're making. We wouldn't be certifying that they are truly inclusive. We can't vouch for that, but we can always remove the certification. So that is the piece there.
Actually reminds me very much of a quote of Bertolt Brecht from the Three Penny Opera. I've got the German here. Denn die einen sind im Dunkeln und die anderen sind im Licht. Und man sieht nur die im Lichte, die im Dunkel sieht man nicht. So some are in the dark.
I was thinking that exact thing.
Yeah, some are in the dark and the others are in the light. But you only see the ones in the light. You don't see the ones who are in the dark. So actually making sure that everybody can shine, that you can see whoever is there, what you were referring to, the people under the bridge that are not anonymized, opposed to the ones just standing in front of their house, and making sure that everybody really counts, that everybody can play their role, whether that is within society or within a specific organization. But whatever your background, whatever your training, whatever your function, you can contribute to the success of the community.
Right.
Yes. And we're the only eyes on processes around data, right? Where we're supposed to be that stopgap. If we're already in there from an analytical review standpoint, it's really helpful if privacy attorneys can lend their expertise to go a bit further and think about who else is impacted or what else should be considered.
Right. Because we already know that, the engineers are not trained to consider inclusion, diversity, social justice, data ethics as their programming or building their tools. And it's only when the outcome is inherently biased, and that is found out typically publicly somehow, and they're called out on, do they go, oh, wait, yes, we used an inherently biased database to pull from. How do we now go back and change it? You need someone that's looking at it in advance.
But if the engineers are truly diverse,
They might be.
You will find that it's not training that guides them, right? But an inherent understanding of where disparities may lie. And so that you're right. And that's why peer review and diversity inclusion reviews are very worth it.
So how do you go about in practice in looking at those certifications? What steps do you take, or how do you make those assessments? Maybe that's the right question.
So the notion is very simple, and it's really about understanding what documents have put in place. Is it part of the founding documents? Is it part of the what the CEO is talking about in public? Has it been considered as part of your employee manual? How can you evidence that you've actually built these checks and balances in? So it's accountability levels. I think DEI being part of your performance review is a really critical piece.
Yeah, that's huge.
Employees. It's a very critical piece. It's around whether or not you have training, whether or not you have a feedback mechanism, right? Because especially in the day and age where we're all working from home, it's all about signal strength. The messaging you're putting out is pretty much sometimes the sum total of what you're accomplishing. So what people are experiencing and their ability in an economy where they might feel uncertain to actually give feedback about what they perceive in terms of microaggressions, neurodiversity, accessibility issues, other accessibility issues, that's really important to allow people to do that without putting their name to it, to make sure that they can do that in a way that's not identified. That kind of thing, whether it's through us or someone else, if you have a feedback mechanism in place, you have accountability, that is how you know an organization has done everything that it could to ensure that it is by design established to be inclusive and that they are really working that direction.
Right.
At the same time, if I hear you say all of that, my first thought is that takes an awful lot of data to make that analysis. And that could also include a lot of sensitive data about who people are and their backgrounds and maybe their medical conditions or their sexual orientations or family histories or whatever sensitive data could be out there. And still you say, well, we do it without sensitive data.
No, I didn't say that. That's where Safe Porter comes in. So the notion was, how best, and this is three years ago or so, I started the company to sort of figure out how best to ensure that the aggregate data and or the government reporting data, that's a subset of the aggregate data that companies want, right? We have this big appetite for data, especially around diversity and inclusion, but that the aggregate data that they want is all that they get, so that their data risk, and of course the data risk of the risk to the data subjects and the individuals to whom we as a company have a sworn fiduciary duty, which is built into our contracting, that is something that they don't live together, and the individuals who give us the data are not identifiable to us. So they still have the ability to change their data, delete their data, and make a data subject access request. So that goes on a form through the company who has to verify that that's actually them. But suffice it to say, we work very hard to build out something that was both privacy centric, fully secure, and would insulate that data against being something that would tether to the identity of that person, to who they are in terms of their name and their contact information. Though, of course, when you hold that data, it is always, ostensibly identifiable data because we're talking about identity characteristics, right?
Right.
But if you have a database where a number that sits is separate than that of the client, and you know that there are 400 comic book collectors and 2 opt-outs and 3 original gender females, you don't actually have anything about individuals in a way that is going to harm them or put them at risk.
So can you always make sure that the aggregates are high enough not to identify somebody?
Yeah. Do you have a floor, like it has to be at least 20 or something like that?
It's different thresholds. So right now we have all sorts of K-anonymity protocols in place that are actually in the process of being peer reviewed. We've essentially set up very broad protocols that when you say you want to limit your appetite for data, we've really got it so that basically quarterly insights will come, as well as certain changes that happen where you have enough people, right, where K-anonymity isn't an issue. But if you have a recency or a scarcity issue, we have a way to block those. We are working with an incredible team to try to get the more nuanced K-anonymity thresholds that will actually allow us to provide more information. Once we've had those secondarily peer reviewed, then we'll be set on that piece. But right now, we're functioning at a level where we can give insights without risk of timing or scarcity identifying individuals, which is really great. And that was our mission. The fact that we're now in a position to be able to refine that further with more specific thresholds is pretty amazing.
And you keep using a term that I just actually wrote Paul, and I was like, do you know what this means? And so I'm just going to admit it, but I'll do it for the good of our listeners. What is K-anonymity?
So K-anonymity, right? This is great. This is
because it sounds like something I should know about.
Right?
You should. Yeah, you should.
Absolutely. So I like to use the example of a Bono concert because I really miss the way he talks about America. I really want that America. So if we were all at a Bono concert, right? And they said, raise your hand if you recorded a podcast this morning or this lunchtime and a certain, or yesterday's lunchtime. So we would all raise our hands somewhere in the crowd, and maybe 20, maybe 1,000 other people would. And they would say, well, raise your hand if your father was your hero and a civil servant, right? And so then we're down to 2 pieces of information, and maybe it's you guys and like 10 other people. And then you add one other thing, which is, raise your hand if your boss is Hillary Wandel. And then, so then we've really narrowed it down. So we got 3 pieces of information, and from thousands of people, you've identified somebody due to either timing or scarcity. So it's maybe not the best example, but it's one I use commonly, though I don't usually, I still invoke Bono. But anyway, so K-anonymity is the notion that if I am your first Irish Jewish comic book collector, you absolutely, if that pops up and I'm the last person you hired and there hasn't been anybody else hired in the last couple of days, and the dial says, you have this many more comic book collectors, then you certainly have an issue with identifiability. So that is my best summary of K-anonymity, which Paul might do a much less sort of pop culture job of.
Well, we love pop culture on the podcast as well, as you may have heard in the past. So no, but it's basically scaling up some of the information to reduce the likelihood of direct identification. And I think that is a great approach to bigger data sets, because indeed it helps. Of course, the more information you have, the bigger the chances that you are still able to identify somebody. So it's not perfect, but it goes a long way, especially in larger data groups.
I love that. And I want to go back to, Paul, that's the first time I've said that this show. Ha, ha, ha. I want to go back to a comment we were talking about, the social engineers, or not the social engineers. Wow, apparently I have that on my brain. But going back to the data engineers, and that if you have diversity, inclusion, and equity in the engineers that are working on the data, then inherently they will bring their different perspectives to the job. And that is something that Paul and I have talked on the show a couple of times about social justice. Is yes, we want that inclusivity. Absolutely. We want that celebration of people, but not all data engineers are or feel that they are in a position to bring their perspective to their input. And so one of the things that we have said commonly is that not only do you need to hire diversity, inclusivity, people of various cultures and perspectives, you need to make sure they understand that they have a voice. And that's the inclusive part. I think that's right. Exactly right. So it is really critical
for people who don't spend a lot of time here. And there are people who are true experts in this, and I make no pretense of that. But it is important to remember that diversity is a difference in numbers and characteristics. Inclusion is the mechanism by which you make them feel welcome and you make everyone feel welcome, and you actually retain your diversity or change it depending on which direction you're going. Then equity, of course, is the fairness. But that's why I do think that the UK government in certain sectors has a diversity and inclusion impact assessment that they do for pieces of work that they do. And I am suggesting that impact assessment be pushed through in the same way that we're pushing through the privacy assessment, because you're looking at data, you're looking at the ways data is handled. And we have that opportunity to become part of that inclusion by design without charging extra for it, asking anything for it, but making sure that where we're already advising companies, we can say, you know what, when you're looking at this, you should also be sanity checking the disparate impacts that this data could have.
I love it. And we'll make sure to provide that link.
What is the response so far from companies that you're working with?
So in terms of, the people I'm working with on inclusion by design right now are other privacy professionals. And I've actually had a lot of feedback over the last several years, because this is just a passion of mine, right? This is a point of advocacy and not really a business piece at this time, and not something that I ever want to be anything but a nonprofit, right? So, but the feedback that I've gotten is that privacy professionals looking to distinguish themselves are finding that this is a real value add for companies. Companies are getting a little bit of extra feedback at the people in their DEI or their HR, wherever it's positioned in their organization, are feeling like this call, just as we so appreciate when the call for privacy starts to come from different echelons, right? Mm-hmm. So they too are saying, wow, this is amazing. You had somebody working on your DPIA processes or your privacy by design processes, and they actually brought DEI to the table and they're advocating for that. It reinforces something within the organization. And they've had very positive feedback, I think, using that as, I don't mean in a salesy way, but a differentiator for them as an advisor, because where you are telling people more than you are there to tell them and better equipping them to protect themselves and individuals, you have made a real value add, I think. And that's what I've heard.
And this is where that passion for helping really also comes into play. People that are, gosh, I hate the term thinking outside the box, but people who are not just approaching it in a linear, formulaic process, but those who are thinking about the entire process and how to improve it. As you said, the horizon is fixed. So it may be further off than what we think, like when you see the mountains way across the desert and they look like they're just right there, but they're not. So I do believe that those professionals who are creative and flexible in their thinking, and I think this is another way that they can bring that flexibility, that holistic approach, and that passion to it. I mean, I'm very intrigued myself. I don't know about Paul. Paul?
Yes, well, I am too.
It's wondering. Yours to run with. I mean, this is the thing. This is the thing that and especially as allies, right? This is right. To be an ally is not a passive thing. It's not a t-shirt you wear or a meme that you share. It's something that I think you have to do by your own research, your own further education, and the understanding that to really make a difference as an ally has to be a very constant, very vocal thing. And you have to be willing to say the uncomfortable things in the room, because you may have a voice that someone else either doesn't feel that they have the ability to claim, or doesn't feel that they can safely claim. So until that is the case, we all have to push forward in whatever way you can, but never less than relentlessly.
I don't know that Paul and I would ever feel comfortable saying the hard things in the room.
Right. Well,
no, I'm usually very shy during meetings and just sit in a corner and look at my papers.
Exactly.
Paul, I know better.
We don't get up into any trouble whatsoever. And of course, together, we don't get into any more trouble. No, none whatsoever.
Well, we've never been in the same room during a meeting yet. So that's a good thing.
We haven't. We met one time. One time.
I said to someone yesterday, you're my favorite person that I've never met. Right. And it sounds like you guys have that in each other. So that's pretty good.
Yes, it is fantastic. And so we are reaching the end of our time here. And I know that when we invited you to come on the show, was there anything you wanted to make sure that you shared with listeners that we haven't gotten around to yet?
Oh my gosh. No, I'm just glad to be on the show and have the chance to talk with you guys. I think it's wonderful. And I've been keeping a pace with you for a very long time. So it's just nice to join you here.
It is fantastic to have you. And I do know that, we can start the call for let's do a nonprofit day and see if we can't get privacy professionals to start volunteering their time, even if it's just one day that we can do to volunteer time to review practices for inclusion by design. I think that is something we can do.
Honestly, I think that the other thing is, we're all looking for ways to sort of be more together in this moment of chaos and distance. And so the idea is if you're having people sign up to be part of a group, then maybe they can do some good together, and who knows what networking potential. So there is something in it for the people who are doing it other than just helping. But it also it's going to shift the way that these smaller companies feel that they're equipped, right? Because they say, wow, I can really have more than one person talking to me about something, and the refinements that come out of that, I think they're gonna really help the whole industry if we can pull it off. So I'm in, certainly.
I love it.
And I'm pretty sure that some of our previous guests would like to be involved as well.
Oh, who are the names that are coming to mind for you, Paul?
Well, in any case, Emerald and Marie, but there are many more who I think would be happy to support such
some luminaries. We're in it to win it now. Well, listen, this is yours to run with, because I definitely have a full plate. But I don't mean that to say that I won't help. I just consider it. You can have everything about it in terms of just let me support in any way I can.
Well, stay tuned for more on this initiative. Kay and I will discuss and see what we can do maybe later this year. For now, thank you all for listening to another Serious Privacy episode. If you like our series, please do tell your friends and colleagues about us, rate and review our episodes in your favorite podcast app. If you have any questions, or if you would like to be a guest on the show, or if you would like to suggest a guest for the show, please reach out to us via seriousprivacy@trustarc.com or via Twitter @podcastprivacy. You will find Kay on Twitter as Heart of Privacy and myself as EuroPaulB. Until next week, goodbye.
Bye, y'all.
That was Serious Privacy.
If you're a data protection or privacy professional, you already know the pressure. Non-stop regulatory change, AI oversight, internal demands, and the expectation to somehow stay ahead of it all. And the old patchwork of tools just isn't cutting it anymore.
No. That's why TrustArc created a modern privacy management platform powered by Arc Intelligence. The TrustArc platform brings your workflows, evidence, research, tasks, and applications all together in one unified and intelligent workspace, so you don't waste time digging, clicking, or context switching.
With Ask Arc, your privacy assistant, you can ask plain language questions about laws, jurisdictions, or even your own program data, and get credible, cited answers based on NIMBY research and more than 1,000 global laws. It's explainable, transparent, and purpose-built for data protection and privacy.
So if you need to add a vendor, create a cookie banner, or start an assessment, quick actions take formally complex tasks, turn them into bite-sized guided workflows to save you time.
It's a platform that thinks like you, works like you, and helps you move faster with confidence, whether you're a seasoned DPO or you're just getting started.
See how modern privacy gets done. Explore Arc at trustarc.com/serious-privacy. That's trustarc.com/serious-privacy.